Thursday, February 19, 2014, and this is KBIA's Views of the News. Our weekly roundtable on media behaviors comes to you from the Futures Lab studio at the Reynolds Journalism Institute. I'm Amy Simons, and here with me are Missouri School of Journalism colleagues Mike McKean and Ernest Perry. We're going to start with Saturday's return of the Westboro Baptist Church to Columbia to protest the support that the campus community lent Michael Sam after coming out as gay.
Comforted in his sin, Michael Sam, this past week, just absolutely went crazy when he told the world he was a filthy pervert and a rebel against God, and they fawned all over him.
Mizzou sophomores Kalani Lakers and Alex Carruth used Facebook to organize a counter-protest. Hundreds showed up and created a silent human wall in solidarity to Sam and their Mizzou family.
We're both Christians, and you know, the thing is that God is love. God is love, and what they're doing is hateful. But just the fact that they are being hateful and that is a sin, we're also supposed to show love to them. So that's why we're keeping it a peaceful protest, yeah. And we're not going to be, yelling things at them or being vulgar. It's not about that.
That video is courtesy of CBS affiliate KRCG. KMIZ reported from the scene, as did the Columbia Daily Tribune, the Missourian, even KBIA, which doesn't have weekend newscasts, posted an update to its website. Only one major local media outlet chose not to send a reporter to the scene, KOMU-TV. News director Stacy Woelfel offered us this statement, the same one he posted in response to a viewer's inquiry on Facebook. He said, "We made an editorial decision some time ago that the Westboro Baptist group lacks news value. Early protests by the group had newsworthiness, but since the protests are now always the same and appear to take place anytime gay issues come to the fore, there's no news to cover there anymore. Some would say the gathering of the people to oppose the group is newsworthy, but proper journalism would require us to interview and feature people on both sides of the protest line. Since we don't see any news value in Westboro protests, not including them in the newscast means not including those opposed to them either. We did, of course, see news value in Michael Sam's announcement and covered that at what I consider to be the appropriate level last week. So I'm going to open it up to the two of you. Agree or disagree?
I could make an argument for either point of view. You should cover it or you should not cover it. I think that Stacy Woelfel has made a case for why not to do it. I wouldn't have done it that way. And I'll tell you why. Because, it may or may not be true that the Westboro people who only show up when the cameras are present, they only show up because reporters are going to be there, they say the exact same thing time and time again. You can make the case that that's not news. But when 500 or more students show up as a counter-protest around a story that's already in the news, I could make a case that that's pretty darn newsworthy. The other thing I'd say is you can make a decision if you're a news organization to send a reporter or a videographer to the scene and then decide after the fact whether that story is going on the air or not. What if something had occurred there? They wouldn't have been in place to cover that story. Everybody else would have. So I think I would have at least had somebody present just in case. And then one other thing, and I want to let Ernest jump in here, but it seems to me that they missed an opportunity, KOMU did, for a different story. You quoted all these other folks that covered it. Everybody but the Channel 13 gave maybe a little bit of video or acknowledged the fact that the Westboro people were there, but didn't quote a single one of them. Do you have to have some sort of moral equivalency or balance between all the elements of a story? I don't think so. This story was about how the community rose up against these people and in support of Michael Sam. Is that a legitimate story? Yes, it is. And I don't have to give the same amount of airtime or quotes to the Westboro people for that to be a legitimate news story.
Well, I think Mike brings up a good point in the fact that I think KOMU needed to have someone there in case something did happen. I understand where Stacy Woelfel's coming from in terms of the fact that Westboro seems to do the same thing at every event. They come out to every event involving the gay community in which they seem to say, wait a minute, there's another side here that doesn't agree with what's happening in terms of the gay movement. However, I think Mike is right that you need to have someone out there. I also think that it's also an opportunity to further the story, and I think that actually happened in some cases. But I also think that the media missed an opportunity in talking to the people who are out there about the Michael Sam issue and how that's actually showing that the gay movement is moving in a different direction, that it's gaining more acceptance in various ways in terms of sports, as well as in the legal side, as well as in the economic side. So I think there are various ways in which the media could have played that story out and not just focused on Westboro.
I thought it was interesting, too, just to follow up on what Ernest is saying. Imagine 10 years ago if, for whatever reason, Michael Sam had been brave enough then to come out as gay. Would he have been invited as part of the team to show up at Mizzou Arena for the basketball game to get the Cotton Bowl trophy or whatever? Would a huge crowd of fans, not just students, have given a standing ovation to Michael Sam? Probably not. And that was a story in and of itself. And yet, if you aren't there to cover the, quote, protest or counter-protest, how do you put that event in any context? KOMU had a little wire story on their website about Michael Sam being acknowledged at the basketball game, but they had no story for which to insert that into to provide the proper background for it.
Yeah.
So how hard is it when you are the one or the only news organization in a market to skip a story like that?
Well, I mean, it's a decision. It's a decision you make, and you know that there are going to be consequences for that decision. And it's just, do you stand by it? And I'm pretty sure that the reason Stacey put the statement out there about here's why we didn't do it was because they were getting some feedback as to why weren't you out there covering that story. You're a major player in the media market here, and for you to make the decision not to cover it can have an impact in terms of people turning to your competition and saying, well, hey, if they're going to cover it, I may want to watch them, not just for this story, but for all stories.
You know, this was also an opportunity, as we found out from talking to some of our colleagues in the school over at the Missourian.
Yes.
This was an opportunity for some real audience engagement. It's the kind of story that gets a lot of comments, gets a lot of people to provide some sort of feedback. And this was, you could have argued, well, this was an opportunity lost from that standpoint for KOMU too, but they have a much broader, more diverse, and in some ways more rural and conservative audience than, say, the Missourian does. So the risks are a little different.
Yeah, what we had heard from the Missourian is that this was the third most viewed story on the Missourian's website since 2011, and that there had been a lot of sharing and a lot of engagement going on there, and that's where a lot of that traffic had come from. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and spending the last half hour with us. You can read more about all of the topics we talked about today. Check out the Links blog under the Talk Show tab at kbia.org. You can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @ViewsOnKBIA. These are all great ways to watch and listen to our program again, to leave comments for us, questions, whatever. See previews of what we'll be talking about next week and more. Our thanks to RJI's Travis McMillan for directing today's show, to Pat Akers for handling the audio. Josie Herrera is our associate producer. I'm Amy Simons. Be sure to join us again next week when Ernest, Mike, and I are back for another edition of Views of the News.